6 days. 6 long days of silence, emptiness, and reflection, trying to understand what had happened. The decision was already made. The separation, as painful as it was, seemed to be the only possible way forward. But even with the end, his ghost was there, in every corner of the house, in the simplest moments of everyday life, in the memories that kept mixing with the tears. I didn't know what to feel anymore. On that day, when he told me, without any expression, that it was for the best, a part of me wished he'd say something more, something that would make me believe the decision was wrong, that there was still us there.
But there was none of that.
Only silence and a vacant stare. And there, for the first time, I realized that the love I felt wasn't completely gone. I wanted it to be. I wanted to move on without this pain, without this weight. But still, what was left was the longing, the echo of what we could have been, of what we once were. In the first few days, all I could do was look at our children, trying to understand what to do next.
How to go on without him.
But it was necessary. I knew there was no more to rebuild. We each had to follow our own path. Until, exactly 6 days after the end, something unexpected happened. A message appeared on my phone screen. My heart raced. It was him. A simple message that started with an apology, went on with words about how he missed the kids, and in the end, the confession I didn't expect to hear. You're still the love of my life. Those words hit me in a way I can't explain to this day.
But what should I do with that now?
I think we all go through moments when we don't know if what we feel is real or just the echo of a past we can't let go of.
What would I do now?
How should I react to something like this? This is the story I need to tell you. And I promise that by the end, you'll understand why I made the decision I made. If you've been through something like this, or are curious to see what happens next, leave a like and subscribe to follow this story to the end. You won't regret it. I still remember the sound of my phone vibrating that morning. It was a cold morning, and the sun had barely shown itself through the clouds. The house felt quieter than usual, the kind of silence only a separation can bring. When I saw the notification, my heart raced. It was from him. I didn't know what to expect. I had already gotten used to the idea that, after the breakup, there would be no more communication between us. After all, what more could be said? I wanted to believe that the words were already spoken, that there was nothing left to resolve, and that moving on was the only way forward. But there he was again, trying to reach out to me somehow. My heart almost leapt when I saw the beginning of the message. I'm sorry. I know I was wrong, and I feel so. I truly wanted not to care. I wanted to look at that text and just ignore it, as if it were another empty attempt to ease his own guilt. But I couldn't. That word, sorry, hit me in a way I couldn't explain. It was as if, at the same time, he was apologizing and also telling me that he still felt something for me. And that was exactly what confused me even more. Did he really feel that? Was that sorry coming from someone who still cared? Or just from a man trying to ease the burden of something that, no matter how hard it was, seemed like the best option? I kept reading. He talked about the kids, about how he was consumed by longing and how he missed the routine, the house, everything we had built. With each word, a wave of pain hit me, but it also made me realize how much I was still attached to those moments. After all, how do we let go of something so big, something that once was our whole world? How do we erase the memories of a life shared together? He said that, although he knew he didn't deserve it, he still believed he could be happy again and that, if there was a chance, he wanted to come back home. Can you imagine what that did to me? I wanted to feel angry. I wanted to say there was no room for him in my life anymore, that he no longer had a place in my future. But his words were cutting through me in a way I didn't know how to handle. It was as if he was saying everything I needed to hear, but in a way that left me more confused than ever. How can we move on when the love we still feel for someone stops us from completely cutting ties? How do we move on when the longing for him is also the longing for a future that will never be? In that moment, I wanted to scream. I wanted to have the strength to block it all out and simply go ahead with the decision I had already made. But there was a part of me, a small and vulnerable part, that still wanted to hear from him that he was willing to change, that he wanted to fight for our family. I know many of you must be wondering what I did after that. I asked myself the same question. The truth is, at that moment, I didn't know what to do with what I was feeling. I didn't know if the anger was stronger than the love, or if it was the other way around. All I knew was that I was caught in a whirlwind of emotions, and I didn't know how to get out of it. I imagined many times what you would do if you were in my place. Would you also think about the unfulfilled promises, the words that didn't say everything they should have while there was still time? Or would you believe his words, as if that apology was all that was needed to fix everything he had broken? I know the temptation to believe in all that is strong, but I also know that no matter how much he may regret it, what really matters is whether he can truly change. And when the pain is so great, are we capable of seeing change clearly, or are we just searching for a foundation to lean on, even if it's weak? I know you may be thinking that I should have been stronger, that I should have ignored the message and moved on. Maybe at another time, I would have acted like that. But in that instant, facing that unexpected confession, I didn't know what to do with my heart anymore. I didn't know if I was being weak or if I was just being human, wanting to believe that it was still possible to turn things around. After all, who hasn't been swayed by the words of someone they loved? Who hasn't believed, even for a moment, that they could have a second chance? I really wish I knew what you would do. Would you respond to that message, or would you simply move on without looking back? Comment below, because I really need to know what you think about this. The pain of having to make such difficult decisions, of having to choose between what is right and what the heart wants, is not easy. And I know that, deep down, we've all been through moments like this. No matter how much we try to ignore our feelings, they are there, always reminding us of what we still can't let go of. Days passed, and yet, every time I picked up my phone, I found myself hesitating. The message was still there, lingering in my inbox. I couldn't delete it. I couldn't bring myself to respond either. I was stuck in this strange limbo, caught between wanting to preserve my dignity and being pulled toward him like a magnet I couldn't resist. I knew that replying meant opening a door I had tried so hard to close, a door I didn't know if I could ever walk through again. But the silence was unbearable, and as much as I tried to fill my days with distractions, work, the kids, keeping busy, it felt like I was carrying a weight on my chest. The heaviness didn't go away. It never did. The more I tried to ignore it, the more I found myself drowning in thoughts of what he said, of how things had ended, and of everything that led us here. I had to face it, I knew that. So, after a few more days of inner turmoil, I decided to reply. The words felt strange coming from me, like they weren't even mine. I've read your message.
I don't know what to say.
I'm still processing everything. I hit send and put my phone down, not knowing what would happen next. Part of me expected him to respond right away, as if there were a chance to reverse the course of our lives, but there was nothing. Only the soft hum of the phone, reminding me that he was still out there, waiting. I waited too, in some twisted way. I waited for him to tell me that everything could go back to the way it was, that the pain of the past could be erased, that the promises we made would somehow be renewed. But I knew that wasn't realistic. A part of me hated that I even allowed myself to believe for a second that it was possible. What was I thinking? Did I really believe that one message could undo everything? Could it fix years of mistakes and hurt? I was angry with myself for even entertaining the thought. But in the back of my mind, there was that nagging hope, that tiny voice saying that maybe, just maybe, things could still work out. Maybe the love we once had was worth fighting for. But I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. The truth was that we were different people now. The truth was that the love I thought we shared had been slowly deteriorating for a long time, and no amount of words could change that. I started to wonder if I was holding on to something that no longer existed. Was I trying to resurrect a relationship that was better left in the past? Was I trying to save something that had already died? I wasn't sure anymore. And the more I reflected, the more I realized how much had changed, not just between us, but within me. I wasn't the same person who fell in love with him. I wasn't even the same person I was a few months ago. So I sat there, staring at my phone, wondering what he would say, wondering if he was going through the same emotional tornado that I was. The silence between us was suffocating, and yet, it was almost comforting in its own way. It was a kind of peace that came from the understanding that no matter what happened next, I had to choose what was best for me. And that meant stepping away from the past, no matter how much it hurt. But honestly, would you have done the same thing if you were in my shoes? It's easy to say what we think we should do when we're not the one stuck in the middle of it all, feeling like we're being torn apart by what our heart wants and what our mind knows is the right thing. The uncertainty was the hardest part, never knowing if I was making the right decision. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. If you were me, would you have reached out, or would you have kept the distance and moved on? Let me know in the comments because, honestly, I'm still trying to figure it all out. And maybe, just maybe, hearing your story will help me make sense of my own. As the days wore on, I found myself lost in the sea of what-ifs and maybes, battling with my own thoughts. Every moment was a conflict between wanting to be strong and the aching desire to go back to how things were before the silence, before the words that had cut deeper than I could ever have imagined. I began to question everything. Was I too quick to let go? Was there a chance, however small, that we could rebuild what we had? These thoughts plagued me. No matter how hard, I tried to focus on other things. The kids were my anchor, the only thing that kept me grounded in reality. Seeing them every day reminded me of why I had made the decision to leave. I couldn't let their world be filled with uncertainty and pain, not when I had the power to protect them from it. But in the quiet moments, when I was alone with my thoughts, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was abandoning a part of myself too. How do you move on from something that was once so real? I didn't have an answer to that. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just about him or our marriage. It was about me, about what I needed to heal and move forward. For the first time in a long time, I had to be honest with myself. I had to admit that there was a deep fear inside me. Fear of being alone. Fear of losing what I thought was my future. Fear of never finding someone who would love me like he once did. But as those fears surfaced, I also felt a sense of empowerment. I wasn't the same person I had been when I married him. I had changed, and I was starting to realize that maybe this wasn't just about what I had lost, but about what I was going to gain. I had to learn to let go, and that was the hardest part. It wasn't just about saying goodbye to him, it was about letting go of the version of myself that had been tied to that relationship. I knew that if I ever wanted to find happiness again, it couldn't be rooted in the past. But that didn't make the decision any easier. Every time I thought about letting go, there was a pull to go back to the familiar, back to the place where everything made sense, back to the hope that things could be fixed. I kept telling myself that I deserved more than that. I deserved peace. I deserved a life where I could breathe without carrying the weight of old promises and unspoken regrets. But was I ready to face that truth? Could I really leave the past behind, knowing that part of me still loved him? That's the question I had to face. It wasn't about what he wanted anymore. It was about what I needed. But even as I told myself that, my heart still ached. I wasn't ready to say goodbye to the dreams I had once had, the life we had built. But deep down, I knew it was time. It was time to stop hoping for a version of him that no longer existed, and to start accepting the reality of who he had become. And in the midst of all this, I couldn't help but wonder, if you were in my shoes, would you have the strength to move forward, knowing the person you once loved is no longer the same? I wish I could say it was easy, that I could just let go without a second thought, but it wasn't. And maybe it never would be. But I do know this. If I'm ever going to find peace, I have to stop living in the past. So, here I am, trying to make the hardest decision of my life. And I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this. What would you do if you were faced with the same choice? Would you hold on to what once was, or would you let go, even if it meant accepting the painful truth? Share your thoughts in the comments. I need to hear from you. A week had passed since I replied to his message, and yet, I felt no closer to finding peace. If anything, I felt more lost than ever. The silence between us stretched on, suffocating me in a way I didn't expect. Each day I woke up with a sense of dread in my chest, unsure of how to navigate the world we once shared. It was as if I was walking through a fog, unable to see clearly, unable to grasp onto anything solid. And yet, I couldn't escape the memories. They haunted me at every turn. The way he used to smile when he walked through the door, the way we would talk about our plans for the future, the quiet moments when we sat together, just being in each other's presence. Those moments felt like a lifetime ago, yet the feelings were still fresh, still raw, and still impossible to ignore. In the midst of all of this, I found myself asking, why am I still holding on to this? Why couldn't I just let go and move on? Part of me, the part that wanted to be strong, knew that this was over, that no amount of longing or regret could bring back what was lost. But the other part, the part that still loved him, kept hoping that maybe this was just a rough patch, a momentary setback that we could get past. But as the days went by, I began to realize that this wasn't a temporary problem. This was who we were now, and it wasn't going to change. And that realization hit me harder than anything else. The person I loved, the person I thought I knew, wasn't coming back. No matter how much I wanted him to. I tried to keep myself busy, to distract myself with anything that would take my mind off of him. But every time I did, I felt this emptiness that I couldn't fill. I had always defined myself by our relationship, by our family. Now, I was forced to face the painful truth that I didn't know who I was without him. It felt like I was starting over, but without the strength or the confidence to do so. How do you rebuild a life when the very foundation of it has crumbled? And then, one evening, I found myself staring at my phone again, wondering if I should reach out once more. The temptation was strong. What if he had changed? What if he had really realized what he lost and wanted to make things right? But deep down, I knew the truth. Reaching out wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't undo the mistakes, the hurt, the distance that had grown between us. And yet, I couldn't shake the thought that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for us to try again. It was then that I realized how much I was clinging to the past. I wasn't just holding on to him, I was holding on to the life we had, to the person I used to be. The person who believed that love could conquer everything, that love could fix anything. But reality had a different story to tell. And as hard as it was to admit, I knew that the best thing for both of us was to let go. To stop hoping for something that no longer existed. It was one of the hardest realizations I've ever had to face. But it was also the most freeing. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean that the love was never real. It just means accepting that sometimes love isn't enough. And I had to accept that, no matter how much I wanted to believe otherwise. As I sat there, reflecting on everything, I couldn't help but wonder if you, too, have faced this crossroads. Have you ever been in a relationship where love wasn't enough? Where you had to let go, even though it hurt more than anything you've ever experienced? How did you move forward? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, to know that I'm not the only one struggling with this choice. Please share your experience in the comments. It's not easy, but maybe, just maybe, talking about it will make it a little less painful. As the days dragged on, I found myself waking up each morning with the same weight pressing down on my chest. The house felt emptier than it had ever been, even though I was surrounded by the children. Their laughter, their energy, it was all a reminder of what I had once had and what I had lost. I tried to focus on them, tried to be present in their lives as much as I could, but the truth was, I was still haunted by the idea of him. His absence was a constant shadow that loomed over every moment. I couldn't escape it. I couldn't escape the memories. How do you move on from someone who was once your everything? That question played on repeat in my mind every single day. I wanted to believe that I was strong enough to let go, that I was brave enough to build a new life without him. But every time I thought I was making progress, every time I thought I was starting to heal, something would trigger a memory, a word, a gesture, a place, and I would be right back where I started. It was exhausting and frustrating. I had been so sure that leaving him was the right choice. I had been so certain that our love had run its course, that we had both outgrown each other. But now, with every passing day, doubt started creeping in. Had I been too quick to judge? Had I given up on something that was still worth fighting for? The message he sent me, the one that I had read and reread more times than I cared to admit, kept coming back to me. You're still the love of my life. Those words, simple as they were, had shaken me to the core. How could he still say that After everything. How could he still feel that way when we had drifted so far apart? And more importantly, how could I let go of something that was still so important to him, even if it wasn't to me anymore? The question of whether I was making the right choice continued to eat away at me. What if I was wrong? What if this was just a phase, something we could work through if we both tried harder? I couldn't help but wonder, was I giving up too easily? But then, in the quiet of the evening, when I was alone with my thoughts, I'd remember all the reasons we separated in the first place. The hurt, the unspoken resentment, the feeling of being unimportant in his life. I had spent so many years feeling like I wasn't enough, like I was always waiting for him to see me, to truly love me the way I needed.
And it never came.
Not in the way I had hoped. I had to face that truth. He hadn't loved me the way I needed him to. And that was the hardest thing of all to accept. I wasn't looking for grand gestures or promises that he could never keep. I was looking for consistency, for respect, for someone who truly understood me. But in the end, I didn't get that. And no matter how much I wanted to believe that things could change, deep down I knew they wouldn't. I had changed. I had grown stronger, more self-aware. I had learned to love myself in ways I never had before. And that made it even harder to look back and wish for a life that wasn't meant to be. But there was still a part of me that couldn't help but feel the pull. That part of me that wanted to believe in the fairy tale, the part of me that longed for the comfort of the familiar. The thought of starting over, of navigating this new chapter of my life, terrified me. I had no idea what the future held. I had no idea if I was capable of building a new life without him. And the fear of the unknown, of being alone, of never finding someone who would love me the way I had loved him, was overwhelming. But was I willing to stay in a relationship that was slowly killing me just for the sake of fear? Was I willing to settle for a life of pretending everything was fine when, in reality, I was with someone who didn't see me for who I truly was? The realization hit me like a tidal wave. I had spent so much time waiting for him to change, for him to finally be the man I needed him to be. But in doing so, I had neglected the most important relationship, the one with myself. And I couldn't keep doing that. I had to stop waiting for someone else to make me happy. I had to take control of my own happiness. The question I had been asking myself for weeks was finally starting to have an answer. If I could make myself happy first, how could I expect him to do it? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I had been sacrificing my own happiness for the sake of a relationship that no longer served me. And as much as it hurt to admit it, I knew that the only way to move forward was to let go. But letting go didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean erasing all the good times we had. It just meant accepting that sometimes love isn't enough to fix everything. I looked at my children, at the life I had built, and I realized that I had everything I needed to be happy. The question now was, could I embrace it? Could I embrace the future without looking back? Or would I let fear hold me back from living the life I deserved? And in that moment, I couldn't help but wonder, if you were in my shoes, would you be able to let go? Would you be able to accept the reality of the situation, no matter how painful it is? I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you do if you found yourself in the same position? Let me know in the comments. I'm still trying to figure it out, and maybe, just maybe, your insight will help me find the courage to take the next step. The days after that moment of realization passed by like a blur. Each day felt the same, like I was living on autopilot, just going through the motions. I had made my decision, or at least I thought I had. The weight of it all was heavy, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to face the consequences. But as the weeks went on, something inside me started to shift. I began to see the strength I had been searching for in myself all along. It wasn't that I didn't still love him. It wasn't that I didn't still long for the good parts of what we shared. It was that I realized I deserved more than what was left. I deserved peace. I deserved love that didn't come with pain, with apologies that were too little, too late. I had spent so long trying to be the perfect partner, the perfect mother, the perfect everything. But somewhere along the way, I had forgotten to be the perfect version of myself. And now, as I sat alone, reflecting on everything, I knew that this was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment I could finally choose me. I had to believe that even though I had lost so much, I was gaining something far more valuable, myself. But it wasn't an easy journey. It wasn't a clear path to healing. There were still days when the memories of him, the way he smiled, the way he made me feel like I was the only one in the room, crept into my thoughts, and I'd feel the ache in my chest. It was a kind of sadness that couldn't be erased by time or distance. It was the mourning of a life I thought I would have forever. But then I realized, mourning is not weakness. Mourning is the acknowledgement that something beautiful existed and that it's okay to grieve the loss. It's okay to feel sad and lost and broken. But what matters most is what you do after that moment of mourning. Do you let it define you? Or do you rise above it, knowing that better things are ahead? That's the decision I made. And while it's still hard to believe in some moments, I am finally learning to accept that moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It just means making space for something new to enter your life. And that something new is you. It's your own happiness. It's the chance to rebuild, to find joy again, not in someone else, but in yourself. And that's a gift. It's the one thing that no one can take away from you. I'm starting to believe in that more and more each day. And as I sit here, telling you my story, I want to ask you this. Have you ever felt like you lost yourself in someone else? Have you ever felt that you gave so much of yourself to a relationship that you didn't even know who you were anymore? I know I'm not alone in this, and I want to hear from you. I want to hear your story. Please share it in the comments below. Let's keep these conversations going because no one should ever feel like they are the only ones. And if you want to hear more stories like mine, stories that are raw, real, and full of the pain and beauty of life, subscribe to this channel so we can continue sharing these moments together. These stories need to be heard. They need to live on. And if you want to dive even deeper into more stories like mine, be sure to check out our playlist. The link will be in the description or in the pinned comments. These stories matter, your story matters, and together, we'll find the strength to keep moving forward.